everything that matters are the people who make it matter. Yellow Heart is our way of being a responsible business, so we can make a positive difference for you and everyone around us. We know privacy is important to you, which is why we go the extra mile to keep your personal data safe and secure. We also understand that some of us may need more support than others. Through Yellow Heart Privileges, we make it easier for the differently abled and senior citizens to access the internet. We leave no one behind. With the nation moving towards the digital future, we believe everyone should have equal learning opportunities. Through various learning programs, we hope to build a digital savvy generation. And the children's safety on the internet is our concern too. By nurturing responsible and safe internet habits, we hope to make the internet a safer place for everyone, making the internet better for our future and our nation. Yellow Heart is our commitment to you as a responsible business, because it's in our heart to keep you connected to what matters most.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launch of Digi's Life Under COVID-19 for Children's online survey. The event will begin shortly, so do sit tight. Our team has shared an attendance form in the chat, so if not RSVP'd before this, we would appreciate it if you could fill out the form. morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will begin shortly. If you have not filled in the attendance form, it is now linked in the chat, so kindly do so.
Hello everyone, my name is Balvin and I'm from Selangor.
Nama saya Ahmad Faris Daniel bin Muhammad Nordi. Saya berasal dari Sabah.
Nama saya Nuraina Nabiha binti Muhammad Nasir. Saya berasal dari Perlis.
Nama saya Nur Fazlina binti M. Rahmatullah.
Nama saya Muhammad Alan bin Muhammad Syakul.
Saya Cikgu Kokok Ming.
Saya Vice Devi anak perempuan Malibadan.
Nama saya Aida Haris bin Sari.
Saya Cikgu Chong dan mengajar di SJKC Ladang Kerisai, Pasir Gudang.
Saya suka coding supaya saya dapat membina permainan online.
My thoughts behind the interest of coding is to invent AI technology in order to make life a better living.
Daripada coding, kita boleh buat robot, kita boleh buat projek, games dan sebagainya.
Pada zaman sains dan teknologi, koding merupakan perkara asas yang diperlukan untuk ilmu komputer.
Saya boleh kod.
Saya boleh kod. Saya boleh kod.
Saya boleh kod.
Saya boleh kod.
I can code, we can code.
Ayo, kita boleh code.
Kita boleh kod.
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 The fourth industrial revolution is changing how we live, work and communicate.
Children as young as 12 years old go on social media.
Who should not be using the phone too early?
Posting a lot of things about themselves, details which may be dangerous, and they are not aware of the danger.
Because it starts with that, right?
Unfortunately, in the digital sphere, not everything that you can use internet for is good.
A lot of children are
vulnerable to being bullied and to be ridiculed.
With negative comments.
It's just for the spite of it.
Children are not mature enough to take all of that.
It can affect their self-confidence and it can drive them to depression.
It's horrible.
And this is not how we want our society to be shaped by. And it's important that we educate both kids and teenagers.
If they are the victim themselves,
it's okay to approach us as adults, as parents.
Be sure to be their greatest support system because that's what they really need.
But ultimately, young people themselves have to be part of the solution.
Everyone has a part to play in the community. As long as we're united in this movement, we can make a change.
Hi, I'm Aisha.
And I'm Prem.
Robin Singh Dio.
Nurul Iza Anwar.
Hannah Yo.
Jane Teo.
Sigve Brekke. Azran Osman Rani.
Ariane Clark.
Elisa Surihani.
Yasmin Yusuf.
I'm Monica.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Rashid.
We stand for
a kinder internet for all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here today for the sharing of the insights from Digi's Life Under COVID-19 Children's Online Survey. My name is Jonathan Dayson from the Sustainability Team, and I'll be your host for today. Today, we intend to cast a spotlight on how our youth are coping in today's digital day and age. In addition, we seek to kickstart the discussion on the topic as we explore how our children can grow up in a safe and fulfilling digital environment. As we are all aware, our children have gone through a major shift in their lives due to the pandemic, where their entire social life and education has migrated essentially online into the digital space. In fact, Digi has seen data traffic growth of 25.5% year on year, which shows that Malaysians indeed have increased their internet use. Without further ado, let me pass the mic over to Oliver Teh from Digi's Research and Insights team to walk us through the findings. Oliver, over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan, and hello everyone. I'm Oliver from DG's Research and Insights team. So, as Jonathan have mentioned, we've conducted a survey to kind of gauge how our children have been coping in their digital life during this pandemic. In today's sharing, I'll be going with you through 4 areas where we want to find out the children's life under COVID-19, what do they know about cyberbullying, what is their mental health well-being, and also the future digital skills that they are keen to learn. Now, before we begin, let me just go through with you the sampling demographics. We've surveyed over 1,700 Malaysian children across Malaysia, all aged 21 below. As you can see from the region's ethnicity, we've weighted them according to DOSM, where we wanted to have a bit more accurate representation of our Malaysian demographics. Looking at the gender, it is quite balanced with both male and female, but looking at the age group, it is skewed more towards the teenagers, aged 13 to 18. Now, as we first start off in our first section, we wanted to know the children's life under COVID-19, or more specifically, we want to know about their time spent online. As you can see, 38% of them claim that they've spent almost all their time online, and this is skewed more towards the older children, and we can see that the younger children actually have more time restrictions by their parents. Even in their own perceived time, they can tell us that they feel that there's an increased time spent since the pandemic began, as 71% of them feel that they're using much more internet. Now, what are they spending their time on? Looking at the overall activities during the pandemic, most of them are using online, going online to go for their online schools. So it is the most widely done activity during the pandemic. But we wanted to dig a little further to kind of understand what is the activity that they're spending the most time on. As you can see, social media and video streaming are the activities that they're spending most of their time on right after online school. So looking a bit deeper into online school, we also wanted to see what are their attitudes in going for online classes. We gave them a list of statements and asked them to choose whichever one that's relevant to them. As you can see, worrying about their grades and the uncertainty of the exams, and also some of them feeling stressed about their online classes and tuitions are the top mentions. During the analysis, we analyzed these statements and categorized them into positive and negative sentiments. So green for positive and red for negative sentiments. And we further break it down by the age group, and we see that the younger children actually have positive net sentiments, probably because their class right now is very engaging and fun to them. But as they grow older, they start to realize that their studies and academics are one of the things that's causing them a lot of stress, hence why we see this increasing number of negative sentiments. Now, since they're going online for so much, we wanted to know what do they understand about cyberbullying. We first asked them, how big of a problem do you think online bullying is as a problem? And most of them could tell us that online bullying is a very big problem. Now, before we go further into this, we wanted to know, among the respondents that we've surveyed, were there anyone who had any encounter with online bullying? So we broke it down. We did a 2-part question where we asked them before the pandemic began and after the pandemic began. So before the pandemic began of March 2020, you see that 8% of them have some form of encounter with online bullying. Something to take note here as well is that there are some children who may feel uncomfortable sharing with us, so they've actually prefer not to say, or just not sure whether or not they are being online bullied. But what's good to see is that since the pandemic began, we do see that there is a decrease in online bullying. So we've established that these children know how to recognize online bullying as a problem. but do they know how to identify the various forms of online bullying? The most mentioned ones are receiving threats and receiving mean messages are signs of online bullying for them. And if you go all the way down, we can see that only 8% of them could not identify what are the various forms of online bullying. But overall, we see that the fact that these children could recognize online bullying as a big problem and the fact that they're able to identify all these various forms of online bullying is a good thing that our children are quite well aware of. Now, we're going to take it from another angle. We're going to see if, let's say, they are not the one being bullied, but they see someone else being bullied. What is the likelihood of them to provide help after seeing someone else being online bullied? And fortunately enough, most of our Malaysian children are quite responsive as they would likely or somewhat likely provide help when they see these cases. And who is the most likely person they would tell? If they were on a platform, they would report it to a platform admin, or they would tell an adult such as a teacher or a parent. Looking at how responsive they are, we also wanted to know whether or not they've received any forms of online bullying prevention training. Half of them indicated that they did receive, and mostly the source of that training comes from either their parent, their family, or even from school. So that's all for cyberbullying from me. As we move on to the next section, we're going to look into their mental health well-being. We first asked them to share about their positive and negative experience. And looking at a positive experience, we can see that the children are quite appreciative that they are getting to spend more family time together. And in today's day and age, they are able to do video calls with their families and friends. However, looking at the negative, even though they can do video calls, they still do miss spending time with their friends physically, and even to a point where they miss going to school. Aside from just looking at this positive and negative, we also want to know, take it a step further to kind of understand among these children, how many of them could suffer from some degree of depression. So we had the opportunity to work together with Dr. Ooi from Sunway University. So she introduced the literature of Ooi Pei Boon and Ooi Pei Boon, more specifically the manuals for depression and anxiety and stress scales. Now, in the depression segment, there are 7 statements, and if these children could relate to any one of these statements, it would indicate that they do have some degree of depression. Looking at the light blue colors, half of our Malaysian children indicate that none of these statements apply to them. However, when we look into applying the literature's methodology, we could categorize that 14% of them do have some form, are categorized under depression, right? And even when we look into the negative experiences shared earlier, we do see that the children who are categorized under depression have higher degree of negative experiences. So even though 14% may or may not seem significant to some, it is very important that we do not neglect and disregard these children, and we must take care of them, all of our next generations. Speaking of taking care of them, as we move into the last section, we talk about taking care of their future digital skills and equipping them with the right skill sets. Now, we first start off with asking them, during the pandemic, have they gained any knowledge? Most of them have actually gained some form of experience, either through forums, webinars, or online workshops, and even some saying that they've gained knowledge in terms of news, documentaries, or stories they've read around the world. Interestingly, we see that the preferred digital learning method actually comes from YouTube. So it seems that they are pretty engaged in following the YouTubers that they find interesting and learning from them. Now, to move on to the digital skill sets, we ask this in a 2-part question, where we ask them what are the skills that they have now and what are the skills that they would like to learn in the future. As you can see, the skills that they have now, most of them are quite well versed with the simple photo editing or even creating presentations, probably for their online classes. But in terms of what are the skills that they would like to learn, it seems that it's more in the creative side where they want to learn things like creating music or creating games, or even for some, especially the elder ones, they want to learn how to sell things online or even start an e-commerce store. Lastly, as part of future digital skills, we also assess them in how internet savvy they are. Most of our children are actually pretty good in solving routine problems and producing digital content. when it comes to searching for information online, while most of them said they do know how to find information online, probably through Google, but only half of them are able to check if these informations are true or useful. And lastly, when it comes to social media configuration, most of them know how to configure their privacy settings on their social media, and only their friends can see their profile. So, in summary, the pandemic has indeed, in fact, made significant changes in the digital adoption and reshaped the digital lifestyle among the next generation of Malaysia. While majority of the youths view cyberbullying as an ongoing concern, we do observe that there is an improved digital resiliency skills in response to these risks. In terms of their mental health well-being, there is a need to address these digital well-being of these young children in the long term as they eventually transit into a hybrid learning ecosystem in the future. And lastly, capacity building from us is the key to prepare them, our future generation, for the digital future by equipping them with the relevant digital skill sets, including fostering a safe internet and fostering a digital citizenship behavior. So that is all from me. I will now pass it on to Philip. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver, for the survey results. Indeed, very interesting data and very interesting facts. And we are very lucky today and honored that we have a panel who will help us unpack these insights and help us plan towards a better future, right? And here today to join us in the discussion, I would like to introduce Dr. Ooi Pei Boon. She's the Director of Special Projects from the Chancellery's Office and Associate Professor of School of Medical and Life Sciences at Sunway University, if you could bring her up. And our second panelist is Ms. Nadiah Hanim Abdul Latif, a longtime friend. She is a child advocate. She's also a co-founder of Opis International with more than 20 years experience in both the corporate and NGO world. And last but not least, I would like to introduce our third panelist, which is Mr. Zhen Shen. Shen hails from the East Coast. He's a student representative of the Malaysian public schools, and he is the voice of young people today in this panel. Welcome, Dr. Ooi, Nadiah, and Zhen.
Thank you, Philip.
Okay, let's move today to unpack. We have a lot to go through and to talk about. Just now, my colleague Oliver shared that there are 4 sections that we did survey, that we had the survey findings on. The first section is called Life Under COVID. So under Life Under COVID, basically, out of the 1,000 over young people, the amount of time they spend online, the things they spend online. So we see online learning very high. We see entertainment very high. We see learning also quite high. And I just wanted to maybe bring it on a practical level. And we will start off with a question to Zhen. You yourself have been studying from home for at least the past year because of the pandemic. How do you find the survey results, Zhen? Do you find that the findings reflect your own experience or your friends' experience during this pandemic? Over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Mr. Philip, for the question. So I think that the survey is a really accurate depiction of the life of teenagers nowadays under the pandemic, when we transition into a pandemic and lockdown lifestyle. So I think that because of that, a lot of things have been transitioned to the virtual world, where the online world is our only connection and our only mode of communication to the outside world. So I believe that that is why that a lot of these teenagers nowadays are having a significant time increase in terms of their usage online. So basically what they've been doing is like, we've been surfing the net online, we've been attending online classes online, and even things such as even chatting with your friends every day has been transitioned to the online world only, because that is the only way of communication that we have left. So I think that this survey is very, very true in terms of reflecting this phenomenon happening. And I believe that this leads to having students even spending their whole day online. So I also personally experienced that, and I will share a little bit of my personal experience of my everyday life during lockdown. So basically, I start school at 7:30 a.m. in the morning, and right up till 2:30 p.m. I will have online classes. So I will be attending Google Meets, attending Zoom meetings, and using Google Classroom for my schoolwork and everything. And all of those things will be done online using my computer and accessing the internet. So even after school, after 2:30 p.m., I would have some conversations with my friends. I will catch up with my friends using video chats or using FaceTime and all these social media networking sites. And I will also join some extracurricular activities or outside competitions. But those are the types of activities that are also done online because of the pandemic. So everything has been switched to the virtual world. We are always experiencing new things or carrying out our daily activities online because this is the only way that we have left, right? So I think that a lot of these activities are basically just usual activities that we do in our day-to-day life, such as getting entertainment or attending school or chatting with our friends or watching a movie. All of these things are done online because we cannot go to the cinema anymore. We cannot go out anymore. So I think that this survey is a really, really good reflection of how our lives has transitioned to the virtual world, where the virtual world is now our real life already. So I think that is a very, very good depiction.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that sharing. We do see more and more time spent online. The long hours, of course, to balance out concentration, focus, also to balance out downtime, to balance out the taji, right? So it's very important to learn and to gain that balance during this time as we see this becoming more and more of a digital lifestyle. I would like to turn the attention now to Nadiah. Nadiah, you've been working with many families, children, including some of the marginalized and underserved communities during this period. We know that not everyone has access to the internet, not everyone has enough devices or data. It's a continuous challenge. But would you like to share some of your own insights and reflections from the ground when it comes to this?
Thanks, Philip. It really has been a huge range, right? We know that the pandemic has catapulted most of our interactions online, but this also kind of created a wider divide between those that were able to have devices in their hands, or at least have families with devices or digital connectivity, and then those that had nothing at all. So we're seeing a range from anything from 0 to above 35 hours of online consumption of something a week. And it is, to me, really worrying, because if you look at the studies that were done last year, and the Education Ministry did this in 2020, we knew that close to about 40% of children did not possess any digital devices, and only about 15% of the children had personal computers. So while we are looking at maybe those who have means, those who are from the M40 and the T20 category having more access, we have those that are now what we consider the new poor or the hardcore poor, or those that are in really rural or access challenged areas, having very little or close to no contact with the outside world. So the divide has basically widened.
Yeah, very interesting. Yes, I think even right now, I think some of the new stats has shown the access rising to almost 60%. So I think in these 2 years, more and more people realize this gap exists and is trying to close the gap. But like you said, there are a lot of families out there where it's still needed, especially if you're looking at digital learning as a long-term solution. Definitely something that needs to be addressed by the whole of society. Yeah, let us move then to our second section, which is on cyberbullying and mental health. We know that, of course, with the many hours online and the digital world, it's a completely new world, but also many a times an extension of the risk and the challenges that young people face today. Dr. Ooi, if I can turn the question to you, you have seen and analyzed the survey findings. And we see some areas of concern in the areas of cyberbullying as well as emotional coping during this period. Did you observe any real-world consequences to the increased dependence on digital, especially on mental health and well-being of our young people? Perhaps you can unpack and share some of your thoughts.
Sure, Phillips. I think Jensen has just validated our survey finding, and one of the many consequences of COVID-19 for our youth today is the increased dependency on digital. As a result of the new norms, changing landscape of how learning and teaching is taking place, as well as our social engagement. Studies globally, locally in Malaysia, and shows there's an increase of online usage. For Italy, it's about 40%. USA is more than 100%, and in Malaysia, it's about 65 to 70%. This excessive increase of online usage resulted in many issues. Physically, it caused eye strain, sleeping problems, carpal tunnel syndrome, where you have numbness, tingling feelings in your hands, neck pain, some of these common ones. Emotionally, it caused social disengagement for long run, social isolations, depression, and anxiety. In the current survey, survey that we did with this 1,700 of youth as a whole, 4 out of 10 respondents reported to be feeling depressed during this period of time. And they actually show, a sense or reported a sense of feeling hopelessness, lack of motivation, lack of interest, feeling very blue, not up to do anything. And some of them to the extent of saying, I have nothing to look forward to. So recent review on 386 paper published worldwide addressing COVID-19 and the online screen time has shows a what I call moderate relationship between psychological well-being and excessive online time. And the dependency, so the high dependency on digital, especially closely related to the feelings of depression, anxiety, and some of them are actually at the greater risk of developing nomophobia. I think nomophobia is not new to a lot of us, which is the addictions to, I can't live without mobile phone or I can't live without connectivity, right? And our present study shows that those in the, those in the category of spending more screen time category reported to be of 1.3 times more depressed than the others. And another category that is even more worried or more at risk is those who's reported to spend much more screen time online, and the risk of feeling depressed goes up by 5 times. So these numbers is actually very, very worrisome. So heavy dependency on digital not only causing all these negative emotions, but it also increased the potential of the breach of privacy, which contributed indirectly to cyberbullying incidences. Our survey again shows that our respondents who have been bullied before or since COVID-19 reported to be severely or extremely depressed. And this is again another alarms that we need to address. 45% of them question their own self-worth in the sense that they feel very insecure. They are not sure if they are worth living. And these negative thoughts or these negative emotions is alarming if we leave this unattended, and because this will cause to even greater society concerns such as suicidal attempts in the future. So in a summary, with the current norm, and yes, by default, life is digital, like Jensen says, from ECA to learning to meetings, everything is now on digital world. We can't live without them. It's impossible to abstain or say no to digital life. But I think we need to find a balance and to look at any prevention steps that could be taken from the community, from the society, from the family or individual to improve the overall psychological well-being of our youth today. Back to you, Phil.
Yeah, so very true. To that, even as we start moving back to so-called normal, the easing back process really does require us to focus on the mental health being of our young people. To also not to understand the identity online is very much linked also to cyberbullying. I think one of the things we've been working together is on looking at digital citizenship, which is very much about your responsibility online, your behavior online. And as I'm hearing you, digital citizenship now also includes digital well-being, being responsible for your own well-being as you have to spend more and more time online. I would also maybe ask the question to Nadiah, that while the survey showed that majority of youth are coping well with this increased digital use, but there still remains a significant portion of children who are struggling during the pandemic period. And I think even in the counseling areas or in some of the reporting areas, we still see children falling through the cracks in this digital adoption journey. And perhaps some recommendations on how we can do better for these children.
We are definitely seeing children falling through the cracks. And perhaps I might start with a huge caveat that the area that I work with is basically about children who fall through the cracks, are basically about youth that have found it hard to either assimilate back to the larger society or have already had multiple stresses or challenges already prior to COVID, right? So they can be people who are stateless or marginalized, people without proper documentation, people who are belonging to urban poor, or even those who are in Sabah Sarawak, including persons with disability. So because of that, these individuals that are in my radar are already people who have got a lot of different challenge to begin with, even prior to COVID-19. I love what Dr. Ooi said because I think I resonated with a lot of the things that she highlighted. I think one of the things that I would like to add is what I'm seeing in the groups that we facilitate, as well as the children that I see in court. This need for self-validation and this whole area of mental health is a huge issue now. Firstly, because number one, their lives online have forced them to interact with people in ways that they did not before. The type of interaction has also changed. Parents who are now spending so much more time online themselves, you've seen, of course, the rise of parents who are now pivoting their livelihoods online, either by selling stuff or doing TikTok or IG and things like that. And very often you see children being part of the videos that they create as well. So there is actually a power dynamic here that has not necessarily been addressed, how children are sometimes forced to be part of whatever it is that the adults are engaging. And in the children in my radar, some of them are unfortunately forced to be participatory in things that are actually not child friendly at all. We've also seen an increase in things like self-harm, issues of self-worth. We've seen an increase in depression, in the feeling of either wanting to end life or cause harm to someone else. The way in which they communicate their fears and frustrations have definitely changed. Children who are otherwise mild-mannered are now showing signs of either tantrum or shorter attention spans or outbursts that were otherwise not seen as the norm for them. So we definitely need to think of a better way. Some of the things that we can do is, as adults, be mindful of our own consumption and how children are mirroring what we are doing. We ourselves are spending over 30 plus hours in a week. So when we tell our children, or when we tell the children that are in our caregiving that, okay, you can't do this, we have to also be mindful that we need to walk the talk, right? It's not about do as I say, but you need to also mirror the type of behavior that you think you want. Number two, I think stringent laws are definitely needed to start taking in children who are actually being harmed online. And Philip, unfortunately, people are being harmed online even more than before. The amount of hate speech, the amount of sexual content that children are being pushed, the number of sexual harassment that is currently happening is also in the increase. So we're not only looking at pemantauan, we not only have to monitor better, we need to also enforce better. We also need to have spaces where adults and children have got safer dialogue. So I'm really happy to have Zhen here as part of the conversation, because a lot of the policies and the plans that we're making are actually adults talking to other adults. We're not including the young in this decision and the styles and the things that we have to do.
Yeah, and I would like to chip in on what Ms. Nadiah has said, right, about mental health being a really big, having a really huge toll on the mental health of students nowadays, teenagers nowadays, right? So I think that having everything transition online, it is you're forcing these teenagers into uncharted territory, right? We're always venturing into a new field and we're transitioning our whole lives there. So I think that this sudden transition of going from your own physical life into a entirely virtual life where you only have yourself to depend on, where you need to have a high amount of self-discipline and also your own responsibility, taking the responsibility and having the maturity to actually take your life in control and also maneuver your life. I think that is a really huge burden on children nowadays, and also adding it on top of having to worry about economic situations of their family, and also worrying about things that might happen at home, family problems or social issues. So I think that we are actually amplifying a lot of these problems on children nowadays, teenagers nowadays. And I think that this has contributed to a very huge amplification of mental health burdens on teenagers nowadays. So I think that because of that, when they are constantly stressed, when they are constantly tired, exhausted, and consciously anxious about what things might or might not happen, I think that that is a very big contribution to having teenagers, having more mental health problems, as elaborated by Dr. Ooi just now. And I think that because in Malaysia there is a kind of a lack of lack of accessible help given to these teenagers nowadays, lack of accessible mental health counselors or people to talk to or therapists nowadays. I think that this makes the situation even more dire to be addressed. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you, and it's true that it's a real challenge learning to undertake life online. In fact, when I was listening to you, it reminded me. I think one saving grace. Many years before, we've always heard some parents telling their children, "Why are you so anxious about the internet? It's just a game on the internet. It's just social activity on the computer. It's not real life." But I think in these 2 years, as even more adults themselves have to go online for business or e-commerce or socialize, they start understanding this sort of digital anxiety that the children are going through, right? Which is something that they might have dismissed pre-COVID days. And that's where parents are now more important, so much important to understand that challenge that the children are going through. Dr. Ooi, would you like to share also some insights on what parents can do?
I think I echo with what Nadiah and Jensen has to say in terms of what the roles of the parents. Sometimes when we are in the group therapy or doing family counselings with parents, one of the key things that children will always say to us is, "Why should I do that when my parents are not doing that?" Are they supposed to start as role example, role model? So it requires the entire family as a system to come in together to address these kind of issues. So practice cyber parenting at home, I think, is something that we can all do together. Parent has to be, start to equip themselves, like you say, Phillips. In the past 2 years, we are not on the same page. But now parents should learn digital literacy, should have digital citizenship educations, get themselves trained up as like a formal or informal educations. And in weight management, we talk about intermittent fasting. I think with social digital life, we should also practice intermittent social fasting. Set screen time limits when you're on having family meals together. 15 or 20 minutes away from the screen time is not going to carry what. Yes, that's fear of missing out, but 15 and 20 minutes is something that we all can afford, right? So vicarious learning is always the best thing to begin with the family, with the parents being the role model, as what Nadiah has said. Let's start from the family. Let's start from the adults, and then we can now go to the you and say, let's do it together.
Thank you, Dr. Ooi. And definitely, as we talk about parents, I think one very practical question I wanted to ask, I'll ask Nadiah and Dr. Ooi, and then we move to Zhen, right? How do parents start this conversation? A lot of parents said, how do I start talking about my children about online safety? How do I start talking to my children about their digital well-being? It's something that I'm not familiar with. What would be your recommendations for parents to start these conversations, or even looking for support systems? And after that, I'll take your attention to Zhen, and Zhen, maybe for you to share, how about peer? How important is peer-to-peer support when it comes to issues like this? Maybe we start off with Nadiah.
Thanks. So there are many ways to skin a cat. So there are multiple ways of doing this. One is, if you already do have a healthy relationship or an ecosystem at home, having conversations that are what I call bersahaja, right? By the by. It can be as simple as the parent saying, "Hey, how do I do this and that? Is there a possibility that you can teach me?" Part of the reason why we recommend this to parents when we do this in Ooi Pei's programs is because this helps to put the parent not necessarily always in the seat of authority, but in the seat of the learner trying to engage the child. And that's a really important step, because very often parents tell the children what they want them to do, not necessarily engage them in a conversation that is two-way. And you'll be surprised in just by doing this, or at least pretending that you don't know how to do something, you'll be surprised at how much your child actually knows. And this is also a good way of saying, right, now I need to set that parental control because he now knows how to go into all these places in Lazada, which I did not plan for before, right? And things like that. That's number one. Number two, for tougher conversations. For example, if you have a young child that is consuming information that is not age appropriate, a lot of sexual content, violent content is out there. Children as young as 6 months that I've seen in our programs can just ketik, and the next thing you know, things pop up. And algorithms is as such that the more you click, the more you get, right? It will just serve you what you started with. One of the things I try and tell parents, both mothers and fathers and caregivers, is that you need to be very careful with your own digital trail. If you have been consuming adult content and you didn't even bother to clean cache, you didn't even bother to clear history, don't be surprised if those content actually lands in the hands of your 2-year-old and then you'll have a super embarrassing conversation about why you're watching Debbie Went to Dallas, for example, right? And at the same time, having this conversation, it can be as simple as if it's Candy Crush or if it's Among Us or whatever it is, right? Set those conversations about what is okay and what is tak okay, right? And Philip, we've been doing this for about 10 years now, right? Okay, tak okay. And when we first started this, we thought, is anyone going to listen to this okay, tak okay thing? One thing that I've appreciated is by keeping it simple, you're not kind of brain numbing down on them, but you are keeping the message simple. Then they realize, okay, if for example, we're going to do intermittent fasting of the net on Sunday, then it will be everybody together, not just the children because they're grounded, but including the parents. And you're using different ways of reward systems rather than do your homework and then you get screen time. Or after we go out, and if you don't use your phone during this dinner time, then you'll get it after. I'm sure there are many other ways that we can think of. One of the things we need to think about is not use the phone or the digital device or the laptop as a way of parking or nannying our child when we are at work. And that is a super hard thing to do, right? The reality of it is the cost of childcare has increased. Not everyone has a nanny at home. And sometimes the fastest way to keep a child or an individual or an adolescent calm is if they are with a device. However, pointing to everything that Dr. Ooi has said, she's smiling at me because she knows this is a real problem, right? When you do that, to extract it back from the child, you can be sure if they are a non-neurotypical child, because we work with the PWDs, right? You will have a massive temper tantrum that you're not going to be able to handle, including, it doesn't have to mean a person with different neural ability, right? You can actually be a perfectly fine school-going kid and still have the same issue. Because that abruptness of taking something that has been self-soothed becomes an issue. So several things to think about, but I definitely, number one, recommend conversations. Number two, being savvy about the history of where your children have gone to. If you can, and if you've got younger children, set limit. You can be, even YouTube kids can say it's time for bed, things like that. Simple things that you can control. Now, if you don't have devices at all, it will be the reverse. For the children that I've worked with who don't have ketagih, at least some degree of online facility. And we've got families with 7 family members and 1 phone device. And if you are the youngest, you can only do your homework at the end of the day because the SPM going abang, the sister who's in PMR, and then you're in probably standard 2, you're the last to do any of your homework because everybody else is doing their stuff. So find ways to switch things up so that you don't have that situation where those that have too much, but there are many others who don't have at all, and that's bad too.
Dr. Ooi, would you like to chip in?
I totally agree with what Nadiah has just said. Relationship is the key. If you don't have a relationship with your child, it is okay, but if you have it, it makes life easier in such a way because we are on the same page, or we have the foundation to begin with. So my approach is very much similar to what Nadiah has just said, but perhaps I put it in the 3 A's approach. First is to acknowledge that there is a concern. So as a parent, when you observe there is things that is concerning your child, for you, they will just see as it's normal. Oh, my friend did the same thing. So what's the big deal? Why are you jumping on me? Why are you not happy? They might not see it as a problem. We might see it as a breach of privacy, for example. So the first thing for the parents to come forward is to say, I think this is a concern that I'm worried about. Can we talk about it? Maybe 1-2 attempts may take you multiple attempts, but that is, as a adult, we need to start the first step and say, let's talk about it. The second A is acknowledge the feelings. A lot of times when it comes to these difficult talks, it's always about pointing fingers and saying, this behavior is not something that I want to see, or say, you are the problem. Why are you always causing problem? Why are you always the troublemakers? Instead of pointing the finger to the child, and why don't we change the language to say, as your parents, I'm concerned. I'm concerned with the long hour you spend online. I'm concerned with the video that you're watching that I don't know what is it about. I'm concerned about people that's texting you and I don't know who they are. So own the problem starts with the word I, and as your parents, I am concerned, and therefore I'm inviting you for a chat, by the by kind of chat, anything could be. And sometimes we also use the word like, for example, that stranger you talk, I don't know who are these persons. I think to say the stranger may be stranger to us, but may not be stranger to your children. So it's best to have a conversations that is on the mutual round and says, I'm not sure about the person. Instead of talking about strangers, says about the person that you're discussing or showing or interacting with. Can we actually discuss this further? The third A is addressing the behavior. Instead of saying that this long hour is not going to bring you good, talking about you are feeling tired, you're feeling exhausted, you're not focusing in class. These are the behavior that I'm concerned about. It's nothing about you. It's not that I dislike you. It's not that I want to disown you, but this behavior of yours, these symptoms that you're showing worries me. And by all that, can we now start talking and open up the conversation on online safety? So I think we might need to take baby steps. We cannot just go in and say blah blah blah. This is all my concern, and this is what you have done, and this is what the statistics shows. No, all the cases are very much customized in such a sense that it is very personal to the youth themselves. So let's start with a baby step. Let's start with a very open communications. And as Nadiah says also, we put ourselves in the learner's shoes. We don't know all the answers, so we don't need to claim and say, let me fix you or let me help you. But let me learn what you are undergoing, what you're experiencing, and together, let's see if we can come up with the solutions. I think that is one of a couple ways that we could try.
Very solid strategies. Thank you, both of you. Zhen, how about peer-to-peer strategies? Any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. So I'm gonna add on a bit to what Dr. Ooi and Ms. Nadiah has said about parental communication. I think that I agree a lot with them, and I think it's very important to switch change the mentality of parents to let them acknowledge that the internet, the social media is not only a tool for us. It is one of the integral parts of our life. It is very crucial in our lives, and we engage in it every day. So that is the very important thing that parents need to acknowledge, and then they need to join us in on our journey of exploring what we should and what we shouldn't do online. So I think that I do concur entirely with Dr. Ooi and Ms. Nadiah about this, and I think that in addition to that, peer-to-peer support is also very, very integral in making the online space a better one. So I think that one of the main elements of how do we make the internet interaction even better is that we need to first realize that the online place, the virtual world, is also a place where real life humans live. That is the first thing that we need to acknowledge. So I think that peer-to-peer support comes into play in which our friends, because we are the ones shaping our community, we are the ones interacting in the online environment, and that is it is on our shoulders. The responsibility is on our shoulders to make it a place of having positive reinforcement, of being a positive place and not a negative place with a lot of bad things happening, right? So I think that peer-to-peer support is very very crucial in this sense. So what we can actually do is to utilize these peer support in a better way, instead of like creating meaningless trends or creating meaningless hashtags. We can utilize the virality of social media in a better way, in terms of how we can create hashtags, in terms of raising awareness about how we should integrate integrity in our online interactions, or how we shouldn't cyberbully people, or how we should always take care of what we say online, because it also affects people as well. So those are the things that we can do online as peers, as students, how we can affect people and create like a better butterfly effect, a positive butterfly effect that can sort of shape this online community to be a better one. So I think that one of the things that schools can do nowadays is to appoint some people who are more tech savvy in the online world, and make them the role model to their peers, in order to spread this awareness, spread the knowledge of how they should act online, in terms of having more integrity, or having better behavior online. And I think that this is a really, really good approach in making the online world, the virtual world, a better one for everyone.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. Even we see the schools now even more focusing on digital well-being. I was talking to a colleague from the ministry, and that is also something that they've acknowledged that they want to focus on. Nadiah, would you like to share a bit about your insights for schools?
Yeah, so I'll kind of summarize this. These are some of the things that we've done in speaking to educators, both in Malaysia as well as Indonesia, and some of the things that we try and do. What we try and tell them is, very often these teachers are caregivers themselves at home, right? So whatever it is that they're trying to do to manage the children in class, and it's not easy. I know some schools are actually doing hybrid, where while the teacher is actually teaching a real set of students in class, he or she is also teaching a live stream online session for those that are not coming into school. So really hats off to all the educators across the country. It is not easy at all. One of the tools that we try and help them with is what we call the empathy canvas. And I know Dr. Ooi will be very familiar with this, is we always try and tell them, look, when we are trying to deal with the children, and as much as we find it difficult for ourselves, and this can be used for ourselves, what is it that we're trying to empathize? Who are we trying to empathize with, right? So the first thing about the empathy canvas is, who are we trying to empathize with? We need to make sure that the pendekatan, or the approach that we're using, is both age and context appropriate. So something that you would use for a child that is studying in a cluster community center for an indigenous population is not what you would use in Klang Valley, for example, also depending on the needs. Number two, what do we need to do? What is the immediate pain point that the child is facing, and can we solve that for the student or the learner in this particular case? And then try and empathize the situation by seeing it through their eyes. What is it that they see when you're giving them this long lecture about things that they shouldn't be doing? What is it that they're seeing, but what is it that they're also saying to you? Because what we've also seen is children in the last few months and year actually has increased the number of fibs, right? Were you on the computer when you're not supposed to? No. It'll be easier for you to have a knee-jerk reaction and kind of suss that out, rather than actually fessing up to it's going to open up a longer lecture. So you start trying to find small fibs that you can do. Next is be mindful of what your children and your students do, because and this kicks in the child protection part of what we do, right? Very often the background of what is happening in a child's space or house or environment is extremely telling about what might be the environment that they are in. So sometimes we have had situations where we've managed to either help, call, SOS, extract the child, because the background of where the child is when they're having this video call with you, you can already tell there's something that's not right here. Trust your instinct as an educator if you feel that there's something going on behind the scenes on the screen that you're seeing. Because if you're in class, you see the whole child. But if you're seeing the child online, it's actually just in a landscape space, right? You don't really know the whole picture of what's happening. So it's a bit of a guessing game. And then be very mindful of what are the sounds that might be in the background and how you think this child might think and feel. Because essentially, a child that might be really active in class might suddenly become very morose or quiet. So that should already be a trigger for you. Or someone who is doing the complete opposite, otherwise mild-mannered, now aggressive. These are some of the things the teachers can do. And the empathy canvas is something that you can actually find online. It's quite easy for you to kind of use to track your child. That's number one. Number two is child-centered approach, right? Everything you do means the kid is in the middle. We acknowledge even the smallest of wins. because nobody likes to be diungkit, right? You bring back the time when he or she was late for the online class, when he or she was actually there present for 10 times in a row. So we try and acknowledge these wins. And for fun, actually, one of the things that we've done both in person and online is use a leaderboard system. So the children also feel that, hey, I'm being acknowledged for the good behaviors that you want me to show, as opposed to only penalizing them in a retributive system where you demerit them whenever they do something bad. So these are all very kind of simple tips that you can use from kindy all the way to even those in college, because you gamify it according to age appropriateness.
Thank you. Okay, as we come to a close, I think one of the things that we've also seen as we move maybe from risk to opportunities is that we've seen that students are learning. In fact, we've seen a sharp rise in some skills such as video editing or presentation skills. Perhaps we can end with 1 minute for each speaker with a to come on what can children do next. We will eventually move more and more into a digital world. Digital skills are required, digital citizenship are required. Perhaps you can share what is your wish list moving forward as a closing statement. We'll start with Zhen, and then we'll move to Dr. Ooi and Nadiah.
Okay, right. So I think that one of the things that should be more emphasized in today's community, in today's online community, is that we need to have like a more centralized educational approach towards raising awareness of and raising the knowledge, increasing the knowledge of students towards digital online usage, on how they should act and how they should control their consumption online. So I think that it's very important that we have a more formal and more official way of approaching and addressing this issue, and making this into a priority that we must face as throughout our whole community, like from our parents to our teachers to us students ourselves. That is a really important issue that we should actually address. So having a centralized system to actually address that issue. And I think that there should also be more vigorous implementations of campaigns or talks or activities that are working to actually focusing on actually solving these issues is also very important, such as what Cybersecurity Malaysia has been doing, and also CyberSafe Malaysia has been doing. I think that these are the things that should be more emphasized and should be more vigorous, should be more increased in terms of giving these students the experience of dealing with how they should consume and how they should use social media and also their internet platforms and their digital world, right? I think that that's very important because it's a very double-edged sword. We believe that the digital world can be something that you can benefit from, but it can also be your downfall. So I think that it's very important to actually realize the potential of this digital world and how we can best utilize it. That is very important. Yeah, I'm passing the mic to someone else.
Thank you, Zhen. Dr. Ooi.
Well, to the youth who are watching it now or later, the future is yours. So bring us together in this journey. The future skills that you are developing, it is also part of what we want to learn. So this is a partnership. This is an engagement projects together that we can do. And I think by having that partnership, the community, the people around you, your family, I think we will fly and we will succeed further. So to all of you there, let's do it together.
Thank you, Dr. Ooi, for motivating us. Nadiah.
I'm pumped up after her motivation. So for me, children are both the present and the future, right? So if I were to sum it up, there's two things that we need to do. We need to protect what we have, preserve what we have, but we also have to nurture for growth. So if this is their future, then this is their future. We need to be ready to embrace it. And it's going to be an exciting journey. What we should be doing is having the guardrails to assist them to grow and to realize their potential. The internet's not a bad thing. It's just how we protect and we project ourselves.
Thank you so much. And with this, we come to the close. I want to take this opportunity to thank the panels for your time, your insights. Definitely, as we move out of the pandemic, it is an opportunity for us to reset, to rethink the way we want to approach the digital world in the long term. Once again, thank you for your time, and we hope that the insights and the surveys today will be able to help you plan towards a better digital future. Thank you. And I'll pass the time back to Jonathan.
Thank you once again to our amazing panelists. Now, there are lots of key insights that we can take away from today's session. And that's a wrap for today's event. Now, we've prepared a little infographic that summarizes all of our findings of the survey, and that will be made available to you shortly after this. Thank you very much for tuning in.